Releasing in Australian cinemas on February 26th is a new documentary called Floodland, and it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of Floodland, Jordan Giusti. Jordan, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great to talk to you. Now, tell me, this is set around the time of the Lismore floods from 2022, and with Eli and so on. How did the documentary first come about?
Well, it came from a personal connection I had to the area through a relationship I was in with someone who was born and raised there, and who I met in Melbourne, and I would travel with her to the Northern Rivers area where her family was still living. And so, yeah, I was introduced to Lismore that way and learnt a lot about the area, not just Lismore, but the surrounding Northern Rivers area, and had heard about their issues with flooding. But I think at the time I couldn't really. I think I thought of flooding like flash flooding, like maybe sometimes you get in Melbourne. It was described as being bad, but I didn't realize how bad. And I think it really hit home when I was in Lismore in December of 2021, which was about 5 years or 4 years since the last major flood they had in 2017. And so I was talking to a lot of people about how it had just recovered, and it sort of had just gotten back to a kind of peak, and it was very much thriving at that time. And I went back to Lismore shortly after the second flood in 2022, which was, I think, early April at that point. And yeah, just saw a town that was decimated. And obviously, I was watching on the news as it was happening. And yeah, I just couldn't believe, how destructive the floods in that area really are. And so, yeah, I think something about seeing the before and after so starkly, and then also how it personally affected my partner at the time's family, and talking to a lot of people in Lismore, it felt like I kind of wanted to help, but also it felt like a very important event that was going on there. That when I went back to Melbourne, people were sort of blissfully unaware of, beyond some of the initial news reports about it, and they started to die down, and it felt very much like this was going to be an issue for a long time, and had been an issue for a long time. And so, assessing what I could do to help, it felt like my only skills are in filmmaking. I talked to people about if I was to return to the area with a crew and record some of the stories and perspectives that they were telling me, some of which didn't feel like they were appropriately being represented in the crush of the news cycle at the time. Is that something they'd be into? And they said yes, and then they came back, and they were surprised that I came back, and sure enough, I kept coming back for 3 months every 3 months for a few years, and so that's really how the project came to be. And it felt very important. I was working on a lot of other things at the time. I hadn't planned on making a documentary. I was writing a lot of fiction films in development, and I sort of just dropped everything because this felt like so urgent and immediate. That's really how the project came to be.
How interesting to hear all that, and your perseverance is quite incredible. So well done on that. Now, I know you've made some short films, so this is your first feature uh, uh, documentary or feature film. How easy was it to get production behind you so you can actually make the film?
Well, I think it's never easy, especially for your first feature project. It was a lot of really me doing it myself for quite a while, in the sort of initial, you would call it, I guess, the research phase. It was just me, a cinematographer, and a sound recordist for a good year and a half there, just filming and self-funding it. And it sort of got to a point where, I didn't know it was going to be a feature to begin with, as is the case with documentaries. You never quite know where it's going to take you. But it became very clear at a certain point that, this is, it has to be a feature length project. And to do that, I really need some support. And so I brought it to a handful of production companies, but, I felt at the time, so Mofa Stories, or formerly known as Sweet Shop and Green, were really on board with the idea. And yeah, they took the project on and got it funding, and that made things a whole lot easier, and getting the support of Screen Australia at that point, and after that, and then Big Screen, and then Shark Island, and all these other amazing supporters of the film. They're really, with that support, that's how it was able to happen. I mean, without it, we couldn't really make the film. properly, I don't think. So it was a long process, but I think, in some ways it was easy because it felt like I felt like it was such an important topic, and I think a lot of other people felt the same way. So, once the wheels started turning, it really felt like people were coming to the party and really helping the film, which, yeah, I'm very grateful for. It doesn't always happen that way with the first feature, so I'm in a very fortunate position with that.
Yes, no, well done on that. You're right. It's I speak to many, many filmmakers, and yes, it's n never easy to get a project up and to keep going and so on. So tell me about filming Eli, about the shots that you selected to use in Lismore, etc. Because the film looks great. It's really well shot. How did you make those decisions about, I suppose, plotting and scheduling the documentary?
Yeah, I mean, the initial phase, it was very intuitive, or, following a lot of instincts with it. I knew I didn't want the kind of talking head style, and then intercut it with B-roll. I really wanted to feel like it was a verite kind of film where you felt like you were sort of living through it with the characters. And yeah, a lot of that comes down to the DP, Benita Casino, who I'd worked with on all my short films. I mean, and her behind the camera really leading a lot of that. And of course, as is the case with documentaries, there were some shoots where we needed to work with another DP here and there. Some things I had to shoot, but yeah, I think we also made an aesthetic choice where I feel like the beauty of documentary sometimes is you can get away with a lot of you don't really need much. People will forgive a documentary for having a bit of a rougher visual style because they understand that things are happening in front of you and you can't plan it, and all kinds of considerations with support. But I think early on I talked to Benita about not wanting to compromise on the visual quality just because it's a documentary, to treat it almost like a narrative film in terms of the standard that we expect and aspire to. And so that was really informing a lot of our decisions, going into it, which I'm grateful for. I mean, I don't think sometimes you just can't help it. There are shots that don't look perfect, but it was an aspiration of ours to make it feel as though almost like it's a narrative film. In terms of how it looks and feels. I mean, some people did mistake the project as a narrative film when I was pitching it early on, and they realized, oh, this is a documentary. We looked at the stills, and this looks like it was a fiction film or something. So, which is a great compliment. So yeah, that was our thinking visually with it.
Okay, very good. Well done on that. Tell me about the news footage you use, the archival footage, etc., because there are other parts to the documentary that you've integrated into the film. How did all that work for you?
Yeah, I mean that was a lot of research, and I kind of love the mixing of mediums and using archival footage, and I think it can be a really powerful tool, especially when you use it in a way that can present something and help you look at a certain situation a different way. I mean, yeah, that was it was just a lot of research with a great archival researcher on board, Lisa Savage, who was looking for a lot of footage during our post production. And yeah, I mean, I got a bit obsessive with the kinds of archival we could use, or that I thought we should use. And yeah, and I think, I mean, there's something great about archival. You can really capture, a lot of archival is just things that were captured for news reports at a certain time, or for, something that people weren't probably putting their heart and souls into. But just by the nature of hindsight, and we look back particularly at historical ones, there's so much footage there that I think people don't realize at the time of capturing it really captures an amazing moment in time. And,
Mm.
especially some of the stuff from the 70s, and they're capturing people's reactions after a flood. And there's this woman who talks about how her house value is plummeted because of this flood, and that she's actually just going to wait for people to forget how bad it was, and then she'll sell at the original price she bought it for pre-flood. And something that she's just speaking off her mind in the 70s, but it speaks this kind of amnesia that was happening collectively in Lismore. And so things like that. I guess the archival, yeah, it came from a lot of research, but I think that there were just some gems there that really communicated so much beyond the surface level footage, which was always the thing I was looking out for. I think it's like, what's looking at it as like special artifacts that just enrich, I guess, the context for what's happening today.
Yes, yes. How interesting. And I mean, getting the comments from various people and their reflections, were some people reticent to be part of the documentary? Did you have to do much coaxing to be able to get a number of interviews?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there were certainly people who didn't want to be involved or who said they wanted to be involved, but I felt like maybe it wasn't right for them, or and then eventually maybe they would drop off. But I mean, there was no real coaxing. I mean, Eli was someone who we were going to film with on like our first block of shooting, and he messaged us shortly before we went up, or it might have actually been while we were there, and sort of said, he had been burnt out by a lot of news interviews, and he sort of said, "Oh, I don't think I can do this," and so we just respected that and said, "Yeah, that's fine," and we'll come back in 3 months if you want to do it. Then we can. And so, and sure enough, when we went back, we did our first day of shooting with Eli, which now we talk about. He kind of regrets. I mean, he's kind of like, I wish I actually filmed with you guys early on because there was a lot of stuff we probably missed as it was happening. And now that he's seen the film, it's like, I actually wish we did it. But it's I think it's a very delicate situation. Everything that was going on in Lismore, you had a lot of people who were quite traumatized by it, and it felt like we had a duty of care not to force people to do what they don't want to do, which I think, is should sort of be standard practice. As frustrating as it can be as a filmmaker, because you see the potential, but if someone's saying they don't want to film, you just respect that. But I also think a lot of people we reached out to a lot of people, but a lot of people we just met and it just happened organically, or people came to us. So it was a real mix of how people came to the project was really it was all very different. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it was a lot of I guess the production method was just very much like, don't force anyone to do what they don't want to do,
Sure.
and just let it happen naturally. I mean, people who are willingly wanting to be filmed and talk about their story are going to give you better stuff anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just felt like the right thing to do is not to force anything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, I absolutely understand. It's interesting you touch on climate change, you touch on local council, on government response to people's housing and relocating and so on. So there are a number of issues that really are part of your documentary, and I'm interested the way you juggled all of that.
Yeah, yeah, it was very difficult. There was a lot um, that I felt like was important to the story, and there was so many different facets to it. And I felt like the only way to tackle all of that was to look at the flood as this central motif through which you can look at all these different issues through that specific lens. Um, so there was that, and also I felt like everyone in the film who have a major part almost represent multiple different facets of the issues in Lismore. Harper represents someone who went through it, but also this political side through his action and the history of decision making in Lismore. Carly as well, just her perspective, not just through the supporting the community through her mental health work in the area, but also her cultural perspective on it as a Bundjalung woman. I suppose it became a way of like, who are the people that live these multitude of issues, and how do those become represented through them in their everyday lives, and using that as a way in, and then at the right moments going deeper into certain things. But I really like the structure of the film. For me is kind of like it's almost like you're going through a road trip through Lismore, and then you're looking out the window, and as we're going through the main story, you're picking up little bits of stuff that that's quite interesting, and then it sort of colors it in a bit more.
Mm.
But yeah, that's your question. But yeah, it was very overwhelming. There was a lot of things I wanted to hit on, and I think some people's tendency is to focus in, and we certainly did need to do a bit of that. But I really like films that explore the complexity and contradictions of something, and maybe it's a bit imperfect because it's so messy with all these different things. But I think that's just kind of life, that's sort of what I felt was happening. I mean, Lismore's a very eclectic place, and there's a lot of different people, and really, it's impossible to define in like a sentence what Lismore really is.
Mm.
There's so many different aspects. So it also just felt like it was reflecting the like authentic character of the area by approaching it that way.
Yep. Excellent. No, I absolutely understand. I'm interested in your use of music in the film. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, music's very important to me. I really Yeah, and I think I learned that early on. I did some early work very early in my career with Amiel Corton Wilson.
Ah,
I started that as an intern with him, and one of my first job working with him was researching music to use in the project he was working on at the time. And it was a case of like, every week I'd come in with like 300 different songs, and I would listen to them all with him and the editor, and I was almost like his DJ at the time. But I learned so much about how he approached music, and then I actually had a lot of interest in music before that, and there was a real sliding doors where I was either going to be a musician or a filmmaker when I was like 19. So music for me, I think using music in a film is almost a way of vicariously living out this musician fantasy of mine. I can't really make music, but maybe I can find music in a film, and but so that's one aspect, and that's certainly the licensing side of music. But also, I mean, the music really in the film, you know, is so great, and thanks. It's really because of our composer Sam Pankhurst, who is just such a talented musician. I think musician first and like composer second. And I think for me, when I'm looking for composers, that's what I really want to find. Is like, yeah, he has such a great ear, and yeah, it was such a joy collaborating with him on the score for this film, and yeah, finding something that yeah just really dived into the themes of the film, and he lives in Brisbane. I think his son was born in Lismore actually, so it was also like he was coming from I think also a very personal place of understanding of the area, and incorporating a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, music was huge for me. I mean, I feel so bad. Like when we were editing, I was working with the editor Dan Wickman. I think he was using a lot of we need temp music because we didn't have the score. And you go to a music library, and I was like, I can't listen to this like library music of this mass-produced film score music that's used. And I certainly did not want that to end up in the film. But that's just my personal maybe
fair enough.
yeah, maybe my personal
Yep.
you know what I mean.
I
It's almost
understand.
like it
Yeah.
flies in the face of what I believe should be,
Yep.
film music, but also I've reflected it serves a good role, so maybe I was being a bit too stern with
Sure.
that outlook. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. No, no, I understand. Fair enough. You've mentioned editing. Tell me about the editing process. That's always not an easy part of completing a documentary. What decisions did you have to make? How easy was it?
Oh, it was very difficult, but I love editing. I mean, I had edited my short films in the past, so I have a pretty solid grasp of the editing process. But working with Dan Wickman, who had cut The Giants before that, and also Freeman, Kathy Freeman, ABC doco, was really helpful because he had a lot of experience in terms of long form documentary editing, which was a very particular skill set. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a year long process, and it was just a case of really, yeah, it was just, I worked very closely as well with the co-writer, Joseph Mazzetti, who had done, worked on other really great documentary projects himself. And so it was really a process of almost writing the film with him, with what we had, and then taking that into the edit, and then kind of going back and forth, which became a bit tedious. And then things got really sped up when actually it was all three of us in a room together. So Joseph lives in Sydney, we're editing in Melbourne. And when we had sessions where we were all together in the same room, that's when things really just, accelerated in terms of the editing process. So it was very collaborative. And it was also just a huge endeavor to, yeah, take something that did have a lot of things it wanted to say and a lot of things to explore. And then going, how do we focus this in without diluting there's certain things we want to say, and you know, that was sort of the process. It was, yeah, as it always is yeah, it's a lot of focusing in and really being brutal with like, okay, we don't need this as much as we love it, rah rah rah, all that stuff. And but it was sort of made easy that we did at a certain point quite early have an ending for the film, which was Eli leaving. You know, actually I shouldn't spoil it, but you know, we had an ending for the film, and it's it made it easy. It gave us a bit of a spine, and then it was just about filling in the gaps and really
Yeah.
honing in the tone of it all and the pacing, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well done on that. Yes, no, I understand. It's certainly not easy. I'm interested. The film screened at the Sydney Film Festival, and what was the response there and from Eli and others who were part of the documentary, where they're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of blown away by it. I mean, it's always very nerve-wracking to go and like present a film. It's very, you know, um, you're not sure how people are going to respond to it. But yeah, I mean, everyone seemed very moved by it, and particularly the people in the film. And I think a lot of people were who had been a part of it were surprised by it because for them it was like me and yeah, DP and a sound recorder said we all like probably look like film students to them, you know, with the camera. So they're like, oh, you know, it's probably this nice little project, but you know, who knows what it's going to look like. And then, you know, I'm very proud of what we made, and I think they saw it and was like, whoa, this is actually like, you know, a proper movie. And so the reactions were very heartening, and not just from the people involved, but also from the audience. You know, especially initially, there was a lot of people that felt like they had a very strong positive reaction to the film. Um, you know, which was very validating for me. You know, and very encouraging because, yeah, I guess you make a film, you like it, but you never know if that's going to translate or if people are going to agree with you. And certainly, there are probably people who didn't like the film, and that's fine. But in terms of what was communicated to me by people and what I've seen, it seems like it's yeah, it's being warmly received, which is really nice.
It is, and now it's releasing February 26th in cinemas across Australia, which is great to see. Floodland we're talking about. So, Jordan, just to conclude, are you working on other projects at the moment?
Yeah, I'm working on a few different things. I mean, the you know, we do as well. We'll continue working on this film with the Impact campaign that we'll have rolling out. So, you know, sort of trying to yeah, use the film as a tool to actually create some kind of change for some of the issues we discussed, which I think is very important. I think a film alone, yeah, can't change the world. It's actually action that changes the world. So, or change, not change the world, but you know, affect some kind of change
Hmm.
in the areas that you're focusing on. So, yeah, focusing a lot on that, but also looking at a transition into narrative films and working on developing a couple of narrative projects at the moment, which some are picking up some steam, which is very exciting. So yeah, that's the next move for me. Yeah, which I'm very excited for.
Excellent to hear all that. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We've been speaking to Jordan Giusti, who is the director of Floodland, releasing in Australian cinemas February 26th. Jordan, thanks so much for talking with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All the best. Bye bye.
Great. Thanks, Peter. See ya.